Spring training baseball is played this weekend. Let's talk about it all today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, February 21st, 2025. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen. Every single day, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, everybody. Happy Friday to all. Hopefully, send you off into your weekend with a nice little show here. Today, we are going to celebrate the beginning of spring training baseball being played by doing an episode that we do every year. We always have a couple of kind of annual episodes around this time of year. Obviously, roster projections being one. Biggest storylines heading into camp is always one. We did that a couple of weeks ago, week and a half ago now. And then when spring training games are played, I always like to do an episode that is just the players with the most to gain or lose in spring training baseball, because those aren't always the biggest stories in camp. Some of them will obviously overlap, but B, I think that it really is important to do when games start because it highlights what the team, I think the team is looking for on a player-to-player basis, and obviously highlighting what I'm looking for when I'm watching these spring training games, at least the ones that are in fact televised, which is a different argument for a different day. So we've had some different names for it over the years. Players with, again, last year I think we did most to gain and most to lose. This year I'm kind of just calling it like the players that have the most to play for in spring training, because like Tarik Skubal and Riley Green, you'd like to see them. You'd prefer, obviously, that everybody did well in spring training, but that's not reality. And if Tarik Skubal has an ERA of 7, as long as the stuff still looks good and the fastball's velocity is still good, like, I'm not really going to be concerned. Like, it's spring training. Same with Riley Green. Like, I don't really care what his numbers are. He's going to be batting number 2 or 3 on opening day, kind of no matter what. Gary Carpenter, same conversation, right? So who are the players that are playing for a lot, have the most to gain or lose in the 2025 spring training for the Detroit Tigers? I think not necessarily in this particular order, but Jackson Jobe kind of goes without saying is playing for a lot this spring. I think, and this is based on some quotes that have come out from the front office. Our beat writers continue to do a great job. And I know that this quote was flying around in a couple of different articles, but, I think the plan kind of is for Jackson Jobe to be in the rotation on opening day. Now, it's not a guarantee, which is why he's not like the number one, player with the most to play for here. But I think that the plan kind of is like, especially with Cobb getting hurt, like, okay, we're kind of banking on him doing well enough in spring training to solidify a rotation spot for himself. That hype only grows greater when you realize that on Thursday, he pitched a bullpen session to the Detroit Tigers hitters and looked phenomenal. A lot of people, I know Chris McCoskey was talking about it of the Detroit News, but a lot of the beat writers and a lot of the media, even the Detroit Tigers account was, posting videos of it, throwing a bullpen and featuring this power curveball that apparently is just incredible. I just love that. I love it because we've known about the slider forever, right? And that's been it's old news at this point. Obviously, I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but like the slider on draft night, we heard about the 3,300 RPM slider or whatever, right? Having a different breaking pitch that you can go to, and obviously is still going to have the spin, but move in a different direction is only helpful to the number one pitching prospect in baseball. So, yeah, I cannot wait to watch him in game. I cannot wait. You know, last year this time we saw him debut in a spring training game and throw like 103 miles an hour in a save situation. I don't even to end a game. I don't remember the score. Didn't really care. Was kind of just focusing on how incredible the stuff on the mound was with Jackson Jobe. So it'll be nice to see him be in an actual starting role, you know, keep that around 97 and 99 rather than pumping 104 every pitch or whatever. So we'll see. But I think that he is absolutely a player that has a ton to play for this spring training. Sticking on the pitching side of things, I'm going to go with Beau Brieske here. And this is not really for the sake of making or missing the team, right? Beau Brieske is going to be on the opening day roster and is going to be in the opening day bullpen. But for role's sake, I actually think that Brieske has quite a lot to play for. For years now, we have been talking about how Beau Brieske has a lot of talent, and he has a really good fastball, and he has a really good changeup. His best pitch is that changeup. It is absolutely phenomenal. It was his best pitch when he was a starter. He went into the bullpen. His fastball got up to 97, 98, 99 miles an hour. And I would argue the changeup is still his best pitch. It's phenomenal. But the only thing standing in the way of Beau Brieske and like a true high-end reliever is that consistent horizontal pitch. He has a slider. It didn't get exactly, like knocked around the yard. It didn't get crushed last year. But if you're a longtime listener of the show, you've heard me give this spiel a billion times. He needs a horizontal pitch. And right now, his slider just doesn't induce swing and miss at a rate that is really, to be completely blunt, like justifies using it a lot. There are not too many situations where if I was calling a Beau Brieske game, I would, choose voluntarily for him to throw his slider over his really good changeup and his fastball, especially if it's an opposite-handed platoon. I'm never throwing that thing to a lefty. So I think that could play a lot into A, his just success, and then B, inherently, right, his role on the team. If he can increase that swing and miss rate, his whiff rate, by getting that slider to be a little bit more of a legitimate swing and miss weapon, then I think that he could even play himself with a really good spring into, like you're one of the highest leverage relievers on the team. And some people listen to that and are like, did you watch the playoffs last year? He might already be that, which is fair. Like, fair enough. I don't have a rebuttal to that. I just think with a fully healthy bullpen and with the addition of Tommy Kahnle that he's lower on the pecking order. But again, if he comes out and has a really good spring training, there's nothing that says he's not one of the more higher leverage relievers on the whole team, which is why I have him on this list. Let's talk Casey Mize, who I think very obviously is going to make this list. We'll talk about him and plenty more right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into the same game parlay. Great feature. I love using FanDuel's betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team, which is always, kind of a scary thing to do, or if I'm betting on a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I've missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back. Your third and final segment. Nope, that's not true. Segment 2. You're not getting rid of me that quickly. Locked On Tigers, appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shots to everydayers that do tune in every day. And we will, of course, be back on Monday recapping baseball games. How awesome is that? The next time we speak to each other, we will be talking about Detroit Tigers baseball games that were played. That is phenomenal. Today we are previewing, not even previewing. We are getting you ready. We are preparing you, rather, for spring training by going through the players that have the most to play for this spring. I think Casey Mize kind of almost goes without saying that there's an argument, if we would have had the same format as last year of like most to gain or most to lose, I think there's an argument that Mize has the most to lose on the entire roster, which kind of sucks because it feels like the opposite of extra credit on a test, right? Like extra credit on a test growing up, you're like, okay, if I get it wrong, it's not going to hurt me at all. But if I get it right, I get more points. This is kind of like the opposite of that. It's like if everything goes as expected, I think most people are under the assumption that Casey Mize is going to be the fifth starter in the rotation, at least as it stands on February 21st. The only thing that can change that is the performance of him and obviously the guys behind him on the pecking order throughout spring training. So if you're just looking at the player who potentially has the most to lose, Casey Mize with a minor league option left could be anywhere from like Toledo's starting pitcher to major league rotation. And then you have, you can throw bullpen in there, whatever you want. I'm not really sure his stuff plays to the bullpen, but like certainly everything in between is on the table as well, depending on how he looks. I think this spring is really, really important for the former number 1 overall pick there. Jace Young. This is another one that kind of goes without saying, kind of fairly obvious. This guy, similar to what I just said about Casey Mize, could be the AAA starting third baseman, or he could be the opening day starting third baseman for the Detroit Tigers if a righty's on the mound for the Dodgers. And also anything in between that. Start off on the bench, be a pinch hitter, whatever. The thing with Jace Young that makes him such a high name on this list is that we haven't really seen him at his full ability yet, right? Like that wrist injury was legitimate last year and seriously, by pretty much all accounts, hindered his ability to hit. And he wasn't a very good defender last year either. I'm not sure he's ever going to be a very good third baseman as far as defense goes. So those are two big question marks on both sides of the ball. We haven't seen fully healthy Jace Young at the major league level, which is going to obviously affect the offense and how he swings. And I have serious concerns about whether he's going to be able to handle the hot corner, consistently on a day-to-day basis at the major league level. Depending on what he proves in spring training, those results are obviously going to lead to, or those questions being answered are going to lead to what his role on the team is going to be, at least, at the end of March. So Jace Young, obviously another big one. Zach McKinstry. This one is purely just like old school, make the team or don't, man. Like there's not a lot of gray in this conversation, not a lot of blurry lines. Like this one is pretty straightforward. Zach McKinstry, Andrew Heaney just signed with the Pirates. There you go. Zach McKinstry is, I think, could legitimately be playing for his spot in the organization. He is out of options, and ironically, The Tigers got him originally. They traded for him because he ran out of options and he couldn't get sent down. And so the Tigers just swooped in and were like, hey, if you're just going to, cut him for nothing, at least trade him to us. We'll give you, a little bit more than nothing. And here we are. And I think with Trey Sweeney being a lefty, that really makes the Zach McKinstry future and the conversation about him making the team a lot more intense. Speaking of Trey Sweeney, I think it also is very fair to put him on this list. Similar to Jace Young and Casey Mize, like this dude could be the shortstop for the Toledo Mud Hens to start off the year, or could, if a righty is on the mound for the Dodgers and he has a good spring, could be the opening day starting shortstop. So it's fascinating to me where he falls in this too. Over the winter, we kind of talked about it as almost a foregone conclusion that it was just going to be like, oh, the shortstop situation is going to be a platoon of Trey Sweeney and Javi Baez. There is a world in which Trey Sweeney does not make the team out of camp and they just roll with Javi and Zach McKinstry at shortstop for a little bit. And Sweeney, they focus on his development, maybe take it a little bit slower. And then if Javi's really struggling or Zach McKinstry's really struggling and Trey Sweeney's crushing the baseball down there, then a switch happens, in the first month and a half of the season. But it is very much not a foregone conclusion that Trey Sweeney is just going to be on this roster. So he has something to play for this spring as well and is going to have to earn his roster spot, just like a lot of the other names on this list. Kind of a fun one I want to throw on here is Tyler Madison, if he's healthy. Obviously, if he's not fully ready by the end of spring training, then this kind of gets thrown off the list and doesn't really count. But I think I'm a huge fan of his, and I really think that if he is fully healthy and kind of, so when he was going through the minors, especially after he was first drafted, this was a guy that was, there was a lot of question over what his role was going to be and where he kind of fit in to the long-term puzzle that is the Detroit Tigers organization. And I feel like he really found his footing before he got hurt and was a really, really good reliever in the minors. And so for him to be on the 40-man roster, hopefully be healthy, I don't think it's like completely out of the question for him to get a look in the pen at some point this year. And I think that starts with him having a really solid spring if he finds himself on the bump. And like I said, finds himself healthy. So we'll see what happens with Tyler Madison. I think Spencer Torkelson, another one that's a fairly obvious statement, but that I will throw on here. If he comes out and crushes, especially against left-handed pitching, there's still maybe a spot for him, man. Like it's not just a similar, but the opposite, right? Like it's not a foregone conclusion that he is just going to be in AAA to start off the season. Especially now that they did not get Alex Bregman. If he has clearly made a change and is a different hitter and is, again, especially hitting against lefties, there could be a spot for him on this team. Pinch hitting opportunities late in games. Colt Keith can kind of move around the field a little bit. Torkelson obviously kind of pigeonholed into first base or DH, but I really think that his spring performance matters, and it is not just an absolute 100% guarantee that he's going to be in the minors. I will say it's likely. I just did my roster projection. What was that, earlier this week, and didn't have him making the team. If I had to predict right now, I would still say he doesn't, but I think he's playing for a lot this spring as well. All right, got a few more players I want to talk about. Then we'll just kind of talk about the hype of spring training as a whole. We'll do all of that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, as I say all the time, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite as well. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Just visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more today. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment, this time for real, of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in as always. So, talking about the players that have the most to play for here in spring training, I think the player that may have the crown for this year's most to play for award, which does not exist and never has in any capacity, and I just made up right now, might legitimately be Kenta Maeda. He may have the most to gain and lose. If he proves that last year truly was an anomaly and he is more prepared this season, the velocity is a lot sharper this season, he could be legitimately, he could be the 5th man in the rotation on a camp. That is a real possibility, a very real possibility. He also could get straight up cut before opening day. Like, he could not be on the roster, period, on opening day. And that obviously opens the door for everything in between. He was in the bullpen, obviously, for most of last season, especially in the second half of last season when he was healthy. That is very much on the table, as it will continue to be as far as his role on the team goes. He's getting paid $10 million, which is not, the world. It's not the most expensive contract that you'll ever see out of a starting pitcher. But it's not nothing either. And it's an expensive reliever. So, especially like a long reliever, non-closer type of player. So I really do think that Maeda has a ton to gain and a ton to lose here based on how he looks in spring ball. Couple more for you. Justin Henry Malloy, I think, is a similar conversation as Spencer Torkelson. Could be kind of the left-handed pitching bench bat option for the team. Also would provide you a little bit more versatility in the field. Not that he's a very good defender, because he's certainly not, was struggled so much at third base defensively that he was moved off the position entirely, and no one's even talks about him playing third base anymore. Struggled in corner outfield as well. Was not very good in a small sample size defensively last year. Reports are saying Evan Petzold of the Freep specifically put out there that he thinks Malloy is looking really good at first base. That adds to the versatility. If he can be that guy that can play corner outfield, can obviously slide in at DH, but can also maybe give you a little bit of versatility at first base and crush right-handed pitching, that I'm sure can go a long way. And again, even if it's not great defense, gives you at least a little bit more versatility than Spencer Torkelson does. So Justin Henry Malloy, another player to kind of watch out for here. 2 more. One is Wenceel Perez. And I think that he is another one that if I had to argue the hitter with the most to gain or lose, there's an argument that it's Wenceel Perez here. You just can't be a switch hitter and have your OPS against a specific platoon be in the 500s. And that's what he was last year. His numbers against lefties were atrocious. And that just can't happen if you're a switch hitter. So he's going to have to fix that. He's going to have to make adjustments. He was much better defensively than Malloy. So if he is even average offensively against left-handed pitching, you're talking about a guy that absolutely is not only going to shoot up projections and shoot up the depth chart, but is probably going to surpass all of those guys and just make the team out of camp. There also is a very real possibility that he starts off in AAA and is kind of like the first guy called upon when there's an injury or a send down or an option DFA, whatever. So I think there's a lot of volatility in what Wenceel Perez's role could be on this team. And then one more, this is a fun one that really isn't even true and doesn't even count. We don't even have to really like technically include him on the list here, but like Hao-Yu Lee is just already the hype train is here. And again, like this isn't true because he likely won't make the team, and that's totally fine. No one should expect him to make the team. It just feels more and more like all eyes are kind of on him, and it feels like more and more eyes are and heads are being turned, which is just really fun. And if he continues to impress at third base specifically, this is a guy that could have everything to gain. And that's why he's not really, it's like how Y is sometimes a vowel. Like, it's like, yeah, he's not like really, like he's on the list because we're talking about him, but he's not like really, because he doesn't have anything to lose. He could be terrible, and it's just like, all right, well, he needs, more time to kind of marinate and develop in AAA, and that's totally fine. We're still excited about him. Like, no one's going to be completely off the hype train if he goes, 0 for 10 in spring training. So kind of a guy that this literally is extra credit. This is just like whatever happens can only help him. Nothing can really hurt him too terribly much. So yeah, Hao-Yu Lee, kind of a fun addition there. That's the list. So those are the players that I think have the most to play for here in spring training. So excited that spring training baseball is back in our eyes and ears. They play the Philadelphia Phillies to open up spring ball tomorrow on Saturday at 1:05 Eastern. That is a home game for your Detroit Tigers. And as we mentioned, Kenta Maeda will be the starting pitcher for that game. Then on Sunday at 1:05, the Tigers play the New York Yankees. That is at George M. Steinbrenner Field, home of the Tampa Bay Rays currently. But obviously the spring training field for the New York Yankees. No pitchers for either team have been announced for that game. That makes total sense. It is, as we all know, spring training. So Philly's kind of interesting. A lot of former Tigers over in the Phillies organization, top to bottom, on and off the field. So that'll always be a fun game to kind of get everything going. And we'll see who gets in the game. We'll see who plays, and we'll see how everybody looks. I'm so glad we're back, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We, of course, will be back on Monday recapping the spring training games from over the weekend, talking about the big news and notes from games being played, and talking about, obviously, player previews. We got plenty more of those to do. Just keep the spring training train rolling. Appreciate you all greatly. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope, and I'll catch you on Monday, baby. Go Tigers.